Envy, the deadly sin of want. Definition: in Christian theology, envy is defined as a deep sadness or resentment felt at another's good fortune. It is not simply wanting what someone else has, profound discontent with one's own blessings, and bitter feeling that others' happiness or success diminishes one's own. Unlike covetousness, which desires to possess what another has, envy wishes the other person did not have it at all. It's a pain at the excellence of another, as defined by St. Thomas Aquinas. Envy is considered a deadly sin because it directly opposes the virtue and charity or love. Instead of rejoicing with those who rejoice, it mourns with their joy and often leads to a desire to harm them, either by slandering their reputation or actively seeking their downfall. The biblical origin of envy is found in the story of Cain and Abel, Genesis 4. God accepted Abel's offering, but not Cain's. Rather than seeking to correct his own behavior, Cain became resentful and angry. His envy of Abel's favor with God led him to murder his brother. This story is often cited as a foundational example of how envy leads to sin and violence. Another key biblical reference is the Book of Wisdom, which says, "By the envy of the devil, death has entered the world." This refers to Satan's envy of humanity's favor with God, which motivated his temptation of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. Historical classification. Like the other deadly sins, envy was codified by early Christian monks and theologians. The monk Evagrius Ponticus, c. 345 through 399, initially listed 8 evil thoughts, which included envy. This list was later revised by Pope Gregory I in the 6th century, who consolidated a list of 7 deadly sins we know today and placed envy among them. He considered these sins capital vices because they were the head and source of which many other sins could have sprung. Envy, for instance, could lead to slander, backbiting, hatred, and injustice. Envy was labeled a deadly sin because it's a spiritual vice that, if left unchecked, leads to other grave sins and ultimately results in spiritual death. Is considered deadly not for the immediate harm it causes, but because of its toxic, soul-destroying nature. It denies God's providence. At its core, envy is a rejection of God's plan and implies God has been unfair in his distribution of blessings, that he has somehow given another what you deserve. This dissatisfaction with God's will is a form of spiritual rebellion, undermining the core Christian virtues of gratitude and trust. In this way, envy is both a miserable and destructive sin. While the other sins might offer temporary pleasure, gluttony, lust, envy offers no comfort. It's, as some theologians have noted, a uniquely miserable sin. The envious person's happiness is tied to the misfortune of others. Envy is considered a spiritual sin, not a sin, cardinal or passive one. It's a vice of the soul, not body, and classified this way because it directly opposes core Christian virtue of love for one another's neighbor. It's an act of the will and intellect. Envy is not a physical act, but an internal disposition of mind and heart. It's a deliberate choice to be saddened by another person's good fortune. It requires a mental comparison and a bilateral resentment of a person's blessing rather than a physical temptation. It's rooted in pride. Theologians like St. Thomas Aquinas argue that envy is a direct outgrowth of pride. A prideful person cannot stand to see someone else's excellence or success because it threatens their own sense of superiority. This makes envy a spiritual vice, as it originates from the queen of all sins, which is pride. It directly opposes charity. The highest virtue in Christianity is charity, love, and it does not envy. Corinthians 13:4, and rejoices in truth and well-being of others. Envy is the inverse of this virtue. It grieves another's happiness because it's fundamentally opposed to the core Christian life. It is considered a more dangerous spiritual malady than a sin of the flesh. And spiritual motives, from a Christian perspective, the root of all envy is pride. A prideful person cannot bear to see someone else's excellence or success because it threatens their own sense of superiority. This leads to resentment of God's blessings on earth and a denial of God's providence and justice. It essentially says, I deserve that, not them. It's a refusal to be grateful for what God has given. Psychological and social motives. Psychologically and socially, envy is driven by feelings of insecurity, low self-esteem, and a constant need for social comparison. Feelings of inadequacy. Envy is often triggered when a person feels a lack of something they value, whether it's wealth, status, beauty, or skill, in comparison to someone else. This comparison makes them feel inferior, leading to emotional pain and resentment. Fear and insecurity. Envy can be a defense mechanism against a deep fear of being not enough. The envious person may have an underlying fear that another person succeeds, their own worth will be diminished. This can be particularly true in competitive environments like the workplace. Perceived injustice. Strong motive for envy is the belief that another person's success is undeserved. This is a particularly destructive form of envy. It can be a powerful justification for wanting to see the other person fall. For example, if someone gets a job through connection, a person who worked harder but didn't get the job might feel that it's envious because they perceive the outcome is unfair. The comparison culture in modern context, social media, and other platforms that highlight a curated reality of people's lives can feel envy. The constant exposure to others' successes, possession, and seemingly perfect lives make it difficult to avoid social comparison, often leading to feeling of inadequacy. Ways to curb envy focus on cultivating the opposite virtue: charity, love for others, and gratitude, thanks for one of its blessings. The goal is to shift your focus on what others have or what you have to generally wish for others well. Practice gratitude. Envy thrives on discontent. The most direct way to attack is to consciously focus on what you have instead of what you lack. Keep a gratitude journal. Write down specific things you're grateful for every day. This trains your mind to see the abundance in your own life, reduces the tendency to compare yourself to others. Remember God's blessing from a Christian perspective. Every good fruit comes from God. Acknowledge that your own talents, health, and opportunities are blessings, not things you have earned or are entitled to. Cultivate empathy and rejoice with others. Envy separates you with others. Overcoming it makes require a deliberate choice to connect you with feel joy for others. That'll be the end of envy of the 7 deadly sins, part 1. Part 2 to follow.